harmony is both a rich heritage and a significant ongoing challenge here in New Orleans and in South Louisiana. I don't know whether many of you are aware that in 1803, when the Louisiana Purchase took place, St. Louis Cathedral records baptisms of people from 35 different countries, adults, babies. 10 of those countries, Africa. 4 of them, Latin America. Also included the Canary Islands and the Caribbean islands. So from the beginning, Louisiana and New Orleans has been a home for people from different races and cultures. But you and I also know that New Orleans and the South has been burdened by racial segregation. This is what occasioned the writing of a new pastoral letter on racial harmony here in the Archdiocese of New Orleans. In preparation for writing this pastoral, I consulted with many different people from different walks of life and from different races and ethnic backgrounds, and held a series of listening sessions. Listening sessions, some in parishes, some held at a university, Xavier University, and some just inviting people from different walks of life and backgrounds to come together. The stories that they told were, in some instances, appalling and very difficult, embarrassing even to hear. The stories focused on struggles in economic life, making the way through the white privileged entrenchment, struggles in education, struggles in healthcare in a two-level system here in South Louisiana at the time, but also in political life, the way in which campaigns were run and reported on, and finally in the church. There were very embarrassing reports of ways in which African Americans, for instance, sometimes experienced rejection and difficulties in integration in ordinary territorial parishes and in schools. So I brought together a consultative group and began to pen a pastoral letter. I wanted to release it to mark the 50th anniversary of Archbishop Rummel's very important pastoral letter issued in 1956, in which he announced that he was going to desegregate Catholic schools even before the federal government required this in public schools. It was a landmark pastoral, and he made it clear that racial segregation was evil and immoral, contrary to the gospel teaching and to the church's teaching on the fundamental equality of all human persons, the unity of the human race, the solidarity that we have with one another. In the writing of the pastoral, it became obvious that it was going to be important to incorporate my own personal history, starting in Boston, coming to Baton Rouge, moving on to New Orleans. I found myself facing new cultural and new racial phenomena, but I also brought with me the burdens of my own past. And so I began the pastoral letter by talking about my own history and inviting everybody else to reflect on their history. In the course of doing that, I also wanted to lift up the wonderful heroes here in Louisiana and in New Orleans, Henriette DeLille, Homer Plessy, Abp Hughes, and others who paved the way for wholesome racial integration in a challenging and a very difficult atmosphere in which they lived and worked. And I also wanted to lay bare the continuing difficulties that led to the appalling experiences that so many people shared with me. I wanted to make sure that we reiterated the gospel teaching and the church's teaching, and acknowledged that unfortunately that had not always been in the first place given priority in the way in which we lived church together. I developed a pastoral plan that would engage, first of all, the central offices of the Archdiocese of New Orleans, also the parishes, then the schools, and then recommendations for individual persons to incorporate in their own life. This letter, of course, took the form of a pastoral entitled Made in the Image and Likeness of God, a pastoral on racial harmony. And then, after releasing this, formed an implementation committee. Many of the people who had served as consultants became part of the original committee and established an office for racial harmony so that the action plan incorporated at the end of the pastoral might be followed up. It is my genuine hope and expectation that the recommendations that have been part of this pastoral plan will continue to guide and inspire an appropriate response on every level of Catholic life. God grant that grace to us all.